It's the year 2001, September 24th, and Silent Hill 2 is released on the PlayStation 2 to unanimous praise. Its legacy, an unbearable weight that casts a shadow as vast as infinity, and indelible imagery, immortal as time itself. For over 20 years, it was often imitated but never replicated. Enter Bloober Team, a Polish game studio gaining notoriety with their horror releases throughout the 2010s. They struck gold with The Medium, a title that best captured the look and feel of what a modern Silent Hill could be, with their twist depicting a protagonist who would exist between two planes. Many Western developers have tried to make a Silent Hill entry, and all that have tried met a terrible fate. Like a Grim Reaper, Konami has selected Bloober Team to task at remaking one of the greatest survival horror games ever. Can Bloober defy this terrible curse? Were they doomed from the start? Or could it be, were they destined for greatness? Find out in this Silent Hill 2 review. Journey to a place where the mind's darkest corners are given terrifying form. A place where the dead walk among the living, and the line between reality and nightmares blur. A man, James Sunderland, stands alone, a haunting letter clutched in his hand. Driven by grief and lost love, James ventures into a quiet resort town in Maine. This is no ordinary town. It is a reflection of the soul, a twisted mirror that reveals the deepest, most disturbing secrets of those who enter. Here, the subconscious takes on a terrible life of its own. Exploring the derelict town, he encounters grotesque creatures, manifestations of his inner demons. These are not your typical monsters of horror. They are surreal, abstract abominations that provoke a sense of unease, rather than outright fear. These creatures are not figments of imagination. They are the physical embodiment of the repressed traumas, guilt, and pain. This town is a purgatory of the mind, a place where the sins of the past come back to haunt the present. As James delves deeper into the heart of darkness, he must comfort not only the monsters that lurk in the shadows, but also the demons within himself, in the town of Silent Hill. The dense fog that envelops the streets and buildings shrouds James like he is lost in another dimension. This wide-awake nightmare follows the original closely, but expands upon the environments, adding more locations and points of interest. If you know the original, expect to recognize most locations and landmarks. This remake also remixes details and layouts. Areas that were once out of bounds are now fleshed out as new locations. Once pivotal locations become thoroughfares that pay lip service to fans who know the original game intimately. Levels become labyrinthine and will often wrap around and shortcut to prior areas. Every nook and cranny is rendered with precise detail. Silent Hill's streets are moist and leaves flutter in the air. Hanging traffic lights dangle and bob on cables realistically. Asset reuse is kept to an absolute minimum, making the environment feel real. Various newspaper clippings and signs are almost all readable. There are many enterable locations, and each one is festooned with objects and details that tell a larger story, sucking the player even deeper into this world. Silent Hill 2 always looks like a fearsome, derelict ghetto, but the atmosphere becomes overwhelmingly hostile when James finds himself in the hellish otherworld. The peeled wallpaper and rusted flaky protrusions make up this dimension of the subconscious. Everything is stained and rotten as the souls of the cast of characters in this terrible story. There was no chance that the characters would look the same since this is a remake. Like in the original, the cast was chosen to embody their characters for voice, mocap, and likeness. Luckily, Luke Roberts has Guy Seehey-like features and is flawlessly cast as James Sunderland. The mocap with Unreal Engine 5 meticulously captures the micro-expressions and minor twitches in facial muscles. James's combination of vacant sadness and sheer disbelief is gut-wrenchingly palpable to see. Eddie is remade to be more psychotic and deranged. While he may not have a scene where he eats pizza in a bowling alley, What Bluebird team came up with to replace it is more insane. The sight of this bloated maniac eating strawberry ice cream, the worst flavor, barehanded in a derelict movie theater, manages to be more unsettling and bizarre. Maria gets more scenes and is made more likable thanks to her expanded dialogue. As a devoted fan of the original 3 Silent Hill games, I will always cherish that traditional Resi-like gameplay and picturesque fixed camera angles. Sadly, there's no way Konami would ever release a AAA survival horror game in 2024 with traditional horror gameplay. It would be too risky, and the normies would reject it. It is strange that Bluebird team got the job to remake Silent Hill 2 because of the medium, a game that relies heavily on thoughtfully placed, fixed camera shots. Surprisingly, the third-person over-the-shoulder POV works out fine in this remake, and it is due to the new combat system, enemy behaviors, and boss fights, causing the Silent Hill 2 remake to become more video gamey than its predecessor. Battling the physical manifestations of the subconscious is a lot like engaging foes in The Last of Us Part 2, but with weighty melee blows that feel like they connect convincingly. James can bob and weave like a boxer, sidestepping enemy lunges and attacks while following up with light or heavy swings with his close-range weapon. Holding L2 makes James draw his ranged attack, allowing players to fluidly and seamlessly switch between weapons while in a scrap. The combat is more involving than it ever was in the original Silent Hill 2 on PlayStation 2. In the original, it was easy to bypass most enemies, and while that's still feasible in the remake, most enemies are more aggressive and put up more of a fight. Mannequins are fast and are prone to sucker punching James and retreating. Lying figures come in more varieties. Nurses are capable of multi-hit combos and feint attacks. Fighting is a lot more necessary in the Silent Hill 2 remake because the environments tend to hide many items, notes, and keys. Sometimes, the best way to fully explore an area is to wipe out the threats. At its core, this remake is still structured like a PlayStation 2 horror game, but vast in scope and twice as long. Even the puzzles are more elaborate and demand more steps while ingeniously connecting to the narrative. Bosses are overhauled with more thought and deeper gameplay than what was possible ever on PlayStation 2. The battle with the abstract daddy is an absolute high point that ties to Angela's backstory in a creative way. The showdown with Eddie is dramatically reimagined and isn't two guys shooting at each other at point-blank range. Encounters are intense and tactical, relying heavily on the player's reflexes without descending into mindless action. James can be ripped to shreds quickly, no matter how proficient a player becomes at combat, emphasizing the risk of fighting. Health items and ammo are always in short supply, typical of a survival horror game, keeping players constantly stressed if they make too many mistakes. Combined with the relentlessly oppressive atmosphere and the terrifying monsters that can easily make James a statistic, Silent Hill 2 is a palm-sweating thrill ride into the dark recesses of his psyche. The only respite players find is when pondering the answers to the many riddles. Just like in the original game, Silent Hill 2 has difficulty modes not just for the combat, but also for the puzzles. Playing on the hardest riddle setting demands players commit to the challenge, since unlike the combat difficulty, it cannot be changed after the fact. The hard riddle mode is still nowhere near as difficult as the hardest riddle mode in Silent Hill 3, but it will still put average modern gamers to task. Silent Hill 2 from 2001 was roughly about 8 to 10 hours long and pushed players to replay it to unlock the other endings. This remake is about twice as long and has 2 new endings and expanded New Game Plus features that open up some new areas. Beating the game once is necessary to see everything the game has to offer. Getting to see some of the other endings requires the player to go out of their way to perform optional tasks with some New Game Plus exclusive items. Replaying will also reveal new notes and even a fun new weapon to play with. Old details become recontextualized and take on new meaning. Eagle-eyed gamers will take note of diabolical foreshadowing and realize hidden truths in plain sight. Sadly, there is no fishing minigame at Toluca Lake. There's no replacing the original Silent Hill 2, but the circumstances are bleak for it to be preserved. The remake has a very different feel to it, due to the third-person, over-the-shoulder perspective that isn't as exciting or visually striking as the classic cinematic camera angles. Yet the Bloober team makes the most out of the changes by expanding combat and making it genuinely enjoyable and tense. Bloober team's Silent Hill 2 manages to be a worthy alternative that honors the original while also adding enough content to make it justify its price. It's an epic survival horror game that's jam-packed with content and scenarios that will keep players on the edge of their seats and impress with its masterful art direction.
What's that? Huh, radio. What's going on with that radio?
Fog thicker than a milkshake. Can't see my feet in Silent Hill, the freaks and the creeps meet. Pyramid Head, cooking up a nightmare feast. James looking lost, searching for that twisted piece. Silent thrills, ghosts and chills. James in the fog, nightmares give the spills. Silent thrills, monsters meals. Tower dreams get crushed and fear reveals. Mary's voice echoing, that's some next level stress. Chasing shadows, town built to depress. Radio static, nerves a hot mess. Puzzle in the dark, man, it's just a guess. Silent thrills, ghosts and chills. James in the fog, nightmares give the spills. Silent thrills, monsters meals. Tower dreams get crushed and fear reveals. Lost in the fog, just trying to find his place. Town twirls his mind, nightmare on his face. Monster mash dance, can't keep up the pace. In a town where the lost love leaves a trace. Like silent thrills, ghosts and chills. James in the fog, nightmares give the spills. Silent thrills, monsters meals. Tower dreams get crushed and fear reveals. Lakeside hotel, more ghosts than a seance. Broken memories, ain't no chance for romance. Figures in the dark, macabre dance. James in his guilt in a dead man's trance. Silent thrills, ghosts and chills. James in the fog, nightmares give the spills. Silent thrills, monsters meals. Tower dreams get crushed and fear reveals. Lost in the fog, just trying to find his place. Town twirls his mind, nightmare on his face. Monster mash dance, can't keep up the pace. In a town where the lost love leaves a trace. Lost in the fog, just trying to find his place. Town twirls his mind, nightmare on his face. Monster mash dance, can't keep up the pace. In a town where the lost love leaves a trace. Lost in the fog, just trying to find his place. Town twirls his mind, nightmare on his face. Monster mash dance, can't keep up the pace. In a town where the lost love leaves a trace. Lakeside hotel, more ghosts than a seance. Broken memories, ain't no chance for romance. Figures in the dark, macabre dance. James in his guilt in a dead man's trance.
You want more retro game reviews? Try liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and maybe Command will let me do more. And kids, remember to share.